There is no doubt that the work that team members are doing today won't exist from a human capacity in perhaps 5 years' time, if not maybe less.
It started in 1976, a sole trader by the name of Kieran Liston, an accounting firm in a small country Victorian town called Donald. 50 years on, a top 100 accounting firm, boutique on its way to mid-tier. In 2022, the firm appointed its inaugural CEO. His name is Peter Antonius. His job? To build what comes next.
I think in my mind, those that will be successful as advisors and accountants into the future will be those that are really advisory focused, who can take the complex, break that down, and communicate that in a simple and effective way to clients.
What gets a business to one stage of growth won't always carry it to the next. The behind the scenes of building what's next. All right, Peter, great to see you. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Tommy.
Great. Well, let's jump into it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you came in as the CEO at Liston Newton in 2022. I'm keen to know, what was it like then, and what were you brought in to do?
So, yes, started in May 22 and really came in to support the shareholder group, the board, in setting forth a strategy for the future, but probably more importantly, to bring that strategy to life. There'd been a lot of work already done around transitioning, particularly Kieran, the founder, and bringing through a new leadership group. But I guess with my experience, it was about trying to really make sure that they were well guided and that the strategy, which was already sort of working towards implementation, was something that I can continue to bring to life.
And what was it about that strategy that really resonated with you?
Having worked in professional services for well over 20 years across a variety of small, medium and big practices, sort of felt that there was an opportunity to reset how we look at the world of professional services. I developed in my own mind what I called the firm of the future model, and some of those elements that I felt were important for the future of the profession, Liston Newton already had in place, such as having a dedicated client acquisition team, really focused on client service and also that holistic service offering, pivoted around a strategy of their get set, get moving, get free to help guide clients from a cradle to grave approach when it comes to doing business.
So Peter, what's the difference between leading an established business versus one that's in its early stages of growth?
So this year, Liston Newton celebrates 50 years of being in business, which is a great milestone. But obviously through those 50 years, there's lots of history and there's much good. So I think we need to respect where we've come from. We need to absolutely use those learnings of the past to help inform the future. So I think for me, that's been really important in my journey with Liston Newton, particularly those early days. Again, I think a lot of what Liston Newton already had in its DNA was so good, and I believe created a unique point of difference in our market. I see my role was, again, evolving that to the next level based on where the board wanted to go.
So coming in at that point, what were the biggest challenges in that scenario for you as a leader?
I think probably one of the biggest challenges was one, demonstrating value. I think it's a very brave decision by the shareholders to invest in a full-time CEO. There's a lot of accounting firms that are much bigger than us that don't even have a full-time CEO. They traditionally have a managing partner who still looks after a book of clients, but also has responsibility for overseeing the running of the practice. To make a decision to invest in a full-time CEO was a really big and brave decision by the board. So for me, I guess there was a bit of weight of expectation around coming in and making sure I delivered value from day one.
Yeah, wow. And that scenario of founders, a successful business, bringing in someone essentially to run their company, that's a situation that a lot of businesses will consider. Some businesses it doesn't go so well. So keen to learn, if there's someone listening who's either a founder or someone coming into a CEO role. You talked about demonstrating value. What would be some tips you'd give someone who's either coming in as a CEO, how they would demonstrate value, or for founders, how they would actually look for what value was?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think listening is probably the first thing. Yes, obviously I came with a number of years of experience. However, I think importantly, in a firm like this, which is historically a family-run practice, which had grown successfully and had its own DNA, I had to be mindful of not looking to re-engineer what was already working quite well. So a lot of listening and learning, understanding, particularly from the shareholder group, what was sort of what each was looking for from the practice moving forward. And I think what did help was 90 days after I joined, we sort of set forth a new 5-year plan. And that was the opportunity after I'd had a bit of a feel for the business to really bring the shareholder and the board group together. And then for me to work with them on setting forth a new strategy, but lots of listening and learning early on and trying not to be overbearing in those early days.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like I see that that's a mistake that leaders can make where it can potentially be more driven by ego or fear or whatever I need to be doing some things, whereas actually that can be the opposite of what they need to do. And particularly with a family-run business where it's where it's their baby. So that sounds like that was a great approach and then enabled you to get a strategy that made sense as well for the 5 years.
Exactly. I often say in the role of a CEO, a lot of it is about listening, learning.
So you came in, you listened, you understood what the situation was, you built those relationships and set the strategy for the next 5 years. And that was, I guess, 4 years ago. As you go into that next leg up, what tends to be the biggest struggle or what might break first in terms of going to that next level from where you were?
We are a people business. At the end of the day, we deliver outcomes to clients through people. Having said that, in this day and age, you've got to be technology enabled. However, people are still the backbone of our business. So ensuring that we've got the right people in the right seats is critical. And as we scale, that becomes no less critical. In fact, arguably it becomes even more important. And trying to manage people successfully is a real challenge in our business. When you're growing, when invariably there is still a bit of a war for talent, that can be a real challenge in our business.
Yeah, okay, makes sense. So just building on that, the war for talent and bringing in external skilled talent, building your own. A lot of companies talk about developing people and they want to do it, but many don't make it clear as to what good looks like. What's been your approach in that space?
Yeah, I think we're in the same boat. We suffered from that too. I think that the firm had grown successfully. However, there probably wasn't a real clear strategy around how we develop people and what that pathway for growth and development looks like. So we recognised that that was a challenge. And in fact, our team had been challenging us around, what does my career at Liston Newton look like? So on the back of that, last year we implemented what we call a competency framework across our biggest part of our business, which is our business services or tax and accounting business. And that document really is the guiding light for people that when they join Liston Newton, it helps them understand what do I need to be proficient at in my current role, both from a technical and even a soft skill point of view. And then what's the next step in my journey need to look like? So that has been a really important development for us. One, it helps guide the development of our people, but two, it also provides the opportunity for us to understand, perhaps from a learning and development point of view, what support the individual needs to help them take that next step.
And how was that initially received from the team when you implemented that?
Look, I'd say overwhelmingly positive. And in fact, it was probably a bit of an eye-opener for some.
And thinking through some of the, I guess, the wins or the scenarios where it really made a difference for somebody and they're able to develop, what sort of difference did you see between having that framework in place versus not having it clarified?
I think it's been really important, even from a recruitment point of view, because often when you're recruiting new talent, if they're ambitious, one of the first things they'll say is, what does career growth look like for me at Liston Newton? And so one of the things that I often say to people is, look, this is how we would manage people's careers within Liston Newton. We have a competency framework. And I think it also gives them comfort that often in organisations, tenure equals reward. But our view is that it's capability first. So regardless of whether you've been here 12 months or 12 years, if you can meet the requirements of the role that you're in, that will determine how you progress versus I've been here 12 years. I think I deserve an opportunity to take the next step. So I think that's also given potential new hires comfort around how we manage growth and development in the firm.
It makes sense. And someone may say that in an interview as an employer, but actually having it prepared already gives it that legitimacy that this is not something we're saying, this is something we're actively doing.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. I think where we're now at the point of is developing a training framework that sits on the back of that. So where we know that an individual might have an opportunity to develop in a certain area, we want to have a training framework that says, okay, so we've identified you need some soft skill training. Here's some suggestions to help you with that. So we're now sort of working that and adding on that next layer to really make sure it's a holistic and well-rounded approach.
Often starting with the requirements, the assessment, where someone's at, can then trigger the development. A lot of companies go the other way around, where they're like, we'll send someone on some training, and because adults are problem-based learners, it's like, well, yeah, I attended it, it was great. And having a competency framework first and then going with the training is a smarter way to do it.
Yeah, look, I think it's working well. Again, it is a work in progress. We've just completed what we call a training hub, which is allowing us to bring different training opportunities to our team to make sure that, again, they're also busy.
So with the business expanding across teams, service lines and locations, how do you keep everyone together so they feel like it's one business rather than sort of separate pockets?
One of our values is collaboration. And the reason why that value for me is so important is that as a firm, we espouse the notion of a holistic service offering to our clients. So our target market is broadly SMEs turning over $1 to $50 million and the owners attached to those businesses. And we've curated our service offering to that target market. However, having worked in professional services for a long time, I know a lot of firms espouse the notion of providing a holistic service, but a lot of firms fall short in delivery. So it's great that we have that same vision. However, it really is about making sure we live and breathe that. So collaboration is the key for us, and that's why it is a value for our organisation. The more that we can get people connected in the business, talking through problems and solutions that affect our clients, the better our clients will be. So how we manage that is whilst we do have flexible working, which allows Monday and Fridays for people to work remotely, it's mandatory that Tuesday to Thursday, everyone's in the office. And the reason for that is we recognise that the best way to have those meaningful conversations, but also to help support the growth and development of our team, is to be in the same space.
It's an interesting topic because sometimes when businesses don't have the collaboration, they might try and legislate or policy or process that collaboration. Whereas if the fundamentals are not there, if you don't have that as a key value, if you don't have the environment for people to collaborate and people don't want to collaborate, then trying to force it's not going to work. So it makes sense you've got a bit of structure, but also some freedom within that structure.
Exactly right. And again, we talk a lot about putting the client at the centre of all that we do. So we hope that, again, through particularly, I guess, the way the leaders go about doing things, that the other members of the team see that, they learn from that, and they want to replicate that behaviour. So again, there is a role for the leaders of the firm to set the right tone, set the right behaviours, and create the framework that allows those things to happen.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because, again, it's like people will take that guidance from the leaders, no matter what you say, no matter what is said to be required. So you're nearing the latter part of your 5-year strategy from when you first commenced. Looking ahead to the next 5 years, what does getting this stage right look like for you?
For us, our focus over the next several years is to continue to develop our presence in Victoria, and in particular through our new head office in South Melbourne, where we've been for about 1.5 years now. So we've deliberately taken out a space that enables us to grow. And I think for us, we really do want to challenge ourselves to keep growing. I think there's also a recognition that with where the profession's going, scale does matter. So again, for us, growth is absolutely part of it. I guess the challenge for us, though, is growing in the right way. So making sure we continue to bring on great team members who can be part of that journey with us, continuing to develop in our systems and processes, because as we scale a business, having those effective processes and systems is key. So that's something we recognise we still need to work on. And making sure our culture remains strong. So there's a DNA that runs within every team member in Liston Newton that is clearly identifiable and hopefully creates a point of difference in the marketplace when we're competing for talent, which is still a challenge.
I think about scenarios that I've seen elsewhere and some of the challenges. So, and I think about your particular scenario. How do you, as you're growing a business, right, and you've come in as a new CEO, and you've got all that history of the business, and you've got a number of things that are sacred to the culture and really important that you want to keep for the future. At the same time, all CEOs want change, right? And if you're not implementing changes, then that's not the job to just keep it as it is, as we've talked about. So how do you go about keeping all the good things from the past whilst implementing new changes and allowing both the new world and the old world to successfully thrive together?
As a CEO, and I think there's different types of CEOs. I think there's CEOs that are really great on the strategy and maybe the execution's not their strength, and vice versa. I'm probably somewhere in the middle, if I was to say. I think, it's great to have a strategy, but if you can't bring that strategy to life, then the strategy means nothing. And I think even moving to South Melbourne is an example of that. The business had been based in Malvern for nearly 30 years. There was a long history there. The staff, the clients are all very familiar with that location. So to then challenge the board around, look, I think we should look at moving to a different location, closer to the city, to help project the firm to where we want it to go. That was a little bit of a challenge. It wasn't easy, but yeah, in full respect to the board, eventually we all came to a rallying point of saying, no, this is the right thing for the business. But yeah, I see my role as definitely, again, as I touched on earlier, educating, influencing, and if need be, negotiating. But, I really feel that I'm just a part player with the rest of the board in helping take the business to where we want it to go.
Yeah, you've talked about the shareholders, getting them on board, and then your leadership team as well, because there can be a bit of a balance between coming up with the ideas, involving people too much. So what do you see as the balance between directing it yourself versus getting buy-in when looking at developing and implementing a strategy?
So I think first and foremost, making sure the board is aligned is obviously key. Whatever decision we make at the board, it's our decision and we own it wholly. So perhaps whilst maybe I didn't agree with the decision personally, at the end of the day, if that's the decision the board's made, then I've got to get on board and I need to make sure we're all singing from the same hymn sheet. So I think that's really key because realistically in practice, people look for the weakness and then they play on that. So for us, it is important that we're united around whatever decision we make. And then I think from there, it's about making sure we all follow the line. So I do see that every shareholder, every board member, even every senior executive has a role to play in exhibiting those right behaviours or the decision outcomes, whatever it might be. So we have a structure whereby we've got the board, we have an executive, and then we sort of have a manager level even group where we try and cascade the decisions down so people are aware of what's being agreed at the board level, making sure that people have an opportunity to question that. But once those decisions are made and once we've communicated, making sure that people then implement.
There's a phrase which I really like, which is called disagree, then commit, which it sounds like you're employing that with those board discussions, where it's like you can have a robust conversation. Once we've decided, then we're doing that. We can go left, we can go right. The left option might be a 9 out of 10. The right option might be an 8.5 out of 10. And even if the right option is not as good as the left one, if we're all going together, it's still going to be a great outcome. Whereas if we're disagreeing out after the discussion, then nothing's achieved.
Yeah, it's a great point. And again, having worked in a number of businesses over the years, I've seen situations where exactly that has happened, where there's perhaps been fragmentation at either the board or executive level. And it doesn't take much for then the other team members and the junior team members to see that. And that then creates division and can create a whole lot of other unintended consequences. So for us, yes, it is about, yes, we can disagree at the board level. We can have those robust, open, honest conversations. But at the end of the day, when a decision is made, that is the decision that we all agree to and we move forward and as one.
Peter, I really appreciated your candid responses and giving us insight into your journey as a CEO of Liston Newton. It's been really eye-opening hearing the different ways you've gone about achieving success in an already successful business. So thank you so much for coming on the show, and can't wait to see what the next 5 years brings for yourself and Liston Newton.